What we're going to talk about today is the dark side of self improvement. The dark side. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Star Wars. Apologies to anyone who is. I know a lot of people love it. I find Star Wars a little bit sort of repetitive, is probably the easiest way to say it. But it's a good metaphor, if you like, for what I want to talk about today. We all know in Star Wars there's the is it the light side? I don't know. There's the good guys and then there's the dark side, right? Basically, that's the way it works. And very often people who start on the good path, the Jedi path, end up somehow drifting over to the dark side to become evil and use their force and their power in the wrong way. You can tell how bad I am at Star Wars because I'm not a huge fan, but you get the gist of it. The idea is that you start on one end of the spectrum and you end up somehow drifting all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and that's the dark side, where you still have those powers, but you're using them in the wrong way, basically, for evil or for malicious reasons. And in a similar vein, I think that's what can happen if you go about self improvement the wrong way. And that's what I want to get into today. I have about four different ideas that I want to talk through, things that I've noticed in myself and in a lot of people who have been on this journey of trying to become a better version of themselves. Traps, if you like, pitfalls, things that we don't realize are happening in the background, maybe in our minds, that are causing us to not really pursue the path in the right way. We start to drift the wrong way, if you like. And again, I'm not perfect. I am just as guilty of these as anybody else out there. So I want to emphasize that these are lessons for me as much as for anybody else out there. And I want to start off by talking about the fact that I think we always do start on the path of self improvement from a good place. We want to be a better person. We see in ourselves potential, or we realize that, hey, maybe it's up to me to actually improve myself first instead of wanting the world to change or other people to change. So it comes from a good intention. Maybe we pick up a book. Maybe we have a great mentor in life. Maybe we go into YouTube and we see some random person talking about an idea and we're like, huh, yeah, maybe I could adopt that for myself. Maybe I could improve myself. And we realize in that is a lot of fulfillment. When you begin to change and grow yourself in some way, you feel actualized. You think, "Oh, that felt good. Actually, I feel like I'm a better person, and I did this for myself." There's a payoff immediately when you start to change and grow yourself in some way. So I think it always starts from a good place. And especially the younger you are, the more desire you have to grow and develop as a person, the stronger your desire to probably self-improve, self-actualize, self-develop, the more there's an innocence in that. As you grow in age and experience, that can start to shift, particularly depending on who you're around, who you allow yourself to be influenced by. That intention or that desire can start to shift. And I've seen this a lot, both in myself and people around me, where you begin on the path of self development because you just want to be a better person or because you want to achieve something in your life. And eventually you start to fall into the trap of almost being addicted to the process of thinking that I need to keep getting better because everyone else is, or because that's what I'm supposed to do, or because that's the purpose of life, or whatever. And it almost becomes a compulsion. An addiction really is the word I'm thinking of, where you think you have to just keep getting better than you already are instead of enjoying the person that you've become. You see it almost like you're on a treadmill and you're not really enjoying the journey anymore. You're just kind of punishing yourself for results or to reach a certain level. You see this a lot in people who are, on the achievement path in life, who have reached a certain status in their career or reach a certain amount of money or whatever it is, and it's not enough for them. They have to keep going, getting more, getting more, getting more, and they're kind of actually miserable, but they keep pushing themselves to get more, to have more, to achieve more. And if you stop them and say, "Why are you doing this?" they've kind of forgotten. And it's very similar in the world of self development to people who are addicted to reading all the time or going to seminars or following certain gurus or whatever. It's like it's never enough. And that's the dark side. That's what we become, is almost obsessed, addicted. We lose sight of the joy and the value of actually becoming a better person. And we just start to get into this. I don't know what it is. It's almost like a mental a prison where we think that once I break through to this level, then I'll be okay. Or, I'm on my journey. I've got to keep growing and developing, whatever it is. So I want to say it starts with a good intention, but it sometimes drifts depending on who we listen to, who we're around, and how we're framing it in our minds. And with that in mind, I think there's 4 different ways that we fall into the dark side, if you like, of self improvement. So let's go through them. Number 1 is what I call the idealized self. So, the idealized self, which we all have in our brains deep down there somewhere, is a version of ourselves that we want to be. Very often, it's built by looking at other people around us, people who we admire, people who we aspire to be like, taking the best pieces of them and then sort of projecting them inwards onto ourselves. And we say, wow, if I could have this person's physique, or I could have this person's career, or I could have this person's confidence, or this person's charm, or whatever. And we idealize all these small parts, or these components of other people, and we push them onto ourselves internally. And we say, one day I'm going to be this idealized version. Everything in my life is going to be amazing. I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to be evolved and actualized and transcended and whatever. And I'm going to get there. The reality is that what you've done is taken all these idealized parts of other people and you've tried to shove them onto yourself instead of starting from the inside out and going, okay, who am I? Who am I really? And how can I extend and grow that in a healthy way? You've tried to put the ideals of other people onto you. This is a very normal thing. I think if you look at little kids, they copy and they emulate other people, especially people who they trust or that they think are worth copying. And so as adults, we do it as well. We idealize who we can be based on the people around us. And the funny thing is today, especially with social media and the rampant amount of information and media, is that we can do this with people we don't even know. So we can look at a celebrity or we can look at someone who we think's further ahead than us, and we can say, if only I could be like them. I want to be like them. I must be like them. You see this a lot in the fitness world. If you've ever done any working out, there's so many fitness influencers. They only show the idealized version of themselves from certain angles in photos or videos or whatever. You don't see the behind the scenes when things aren't progressing. But what you do is you take the idealized component of them and you shove it onto yourself and you say, I'm not there yet, but one day I will be. The risk of the idealized self is that you're never going to get there. It's a horizon. And as you know, if you approach the horizon, there's another horizon behind it. It never actually gets there. That's the risk. And so if you're falling into this trap of looking at your life in a way where you think, when I become this or when I'm like this person, then I'll be fulfilled. Then I'll be happy. That is you falling into the idealized self. Talking to Daniel just as much as I'm talking to you right now. The idealized self becomes a trap, especially when we take components from other people and we try to project them onto what we think we can be. So that's the first one. The second part of the dark side of self-improvement is what I call the one thing. The one thing is this, what do I want to say, mental trap or false belief that we think there's one thing that will change our lives. And you see this a lot in book titles. If you go to the bookstore, which I like to do regularly, and you go to the personal growth or self-improvement section, many of the books focus on one thing, one component of improvement. And they say, if you just get your mental resilience, or you just work on your confidence, or if you work on your sleep, or you work on becoming influential or whatever, they promise one component that we take on and we think this one thing is the thing that will make me into my idealized self. And we start to really double and triple down on becoming a better thing or taking on that one thing in our lives and obsessing about it. I've done this in the past a lot with communication skills, especially around public speaking, thinking that if I could become the world's greatest public speaker, or if I could win the world championship of public speaking, that one thing for me would make me into the idealized version of myself. The reality is today I am quite competent as a public speaker and I feel confident in myself when I'm on stage, but that doesn't make me a complete whole person because the one thing is a facade. It's a horizon I'll never reach in a way. And there's always something more to learn. But if I obsess and I think that once I achieve this one thing, I'm going to be fulfilled, that is dangerous. And again, if you go and you look at any sort of self help programs or books or whatever it is, very often they do focus on one thing a lot of the time. And that idea that I have to master this or I have to complete this and then I'll be fulfilled, that's the danger of the one thing. So I would challenge you to think about that in your own life. Is there one thing that you're obsessing about, or maybe you've read some books or you've listened to some audio programs, or maybe it's on YouTube as well? Is there one thing that you're kind of obsessing about? And if you think, once I get this, then life will be complete, probably it won't. You'll find something else that's the new one thing, but be aware of it in the moment and realize that life is a spectrum, life is balanced, and realize that that one thing is a component of your life. Absolutely work on improving it, but don't think it's going to achieve and it's going to solve your happiness conundrum, because it probably won't. The third thing that I've noticed that becomes part of the dark side of self improvement is what I call the pay to play guru. When I was younger, used to get very obsessed about particular authors and speakers in the self help genre. For a long time, I was a massive fan, a huge nerd about Brian Tracy. And if any of you have heard Brian Tracy, that's kind of funny to you, because he is probably the driest, most boring self-help author out there in the world. He's written a ton of books. He has all these audio programs, and he kind of speaks like a robot the whole time. And I used to think he was the greatest person ever. And so I bought a lot of his programs and I attended his webinars and I bought his books and things like that. And I obsessed about the guru that was Brian Tracy. The one credit that I'll give to Brian Tracy is that he doesn't push it too far. He tends to give out the most of the valuable information that he has in written and audio format. What has become more common these days, I've noticed, is what I'm calling this pay to play guru sort of model. And if you look at people like Tony Robbins or oh goodness, I can't think of can't think of any off the top of my head, but Tony Robbins is probably the scapegoat example we can think of. It's like you have to pay to get to the good stuff. They've got all these articles or sort of teaser pieces of content out there. Maybe they got books and things like that. But really what they're trying to get you to do is sign up for their mastery program or their evolution weekend or something like that. And that's all pay to play. And there's this kind of, illusory paywall, if you like, of once you pay for my attention or my advice, I'll reveal what's really holding you back. I'll make you into the person you want to be, your idealized self, by showing you actually what's really the problem, or to give you the real information, the real lowdown on what it takes. And it's because they need you to pay for their livelihood. They need your money to actually fund their lifestyle. And it becomes a bit like a pyramid scheme. The more people that they have paying them for this insider information, the more successful they appear and the more people they can attract to sell them this insider information. And it creates this pay to play model. The truth is that there's probably 4 or 5 good ideas in self-development out there that actually are useful. And everyone who purports to be a guru or sell you some sort of new version of it is just using a different version of that same idea. And me too, I'm not trying to say that I have anything unique or different than anyone else out there. I'm just sharing ideas that I've learned. The difference for me that's very important is that I'm not trying to set up a paywall or a pay to play. I'm just trying to share ideas that are useful to me, that hopefully could be useful to you if you want to take them on for yourself. A lot of the time these days, especially online, we're seeing a lot more of the pay to play model. And it's very compelling. It's very addictive because we see the idealized version of these people and we think, okay, wow, they figured it out. They're rich, they're successful, they're flying around in private jets, they're in front of crowds, whatever. They have an amazing relationship, they're ripped, whatever it is. And we look at them and we think, man, they must know something we don't. And so I'm willing to pay to play. And it always starts small, right? You join their little $29.99 program, and then behind that is another program that's $100, or there's a membership or a coaching or a retreat weekend or some sort of thing like that. And eventually you can spend thousands of dollars and waste years of your life pursuing this pay to play model, where really you could probably learn the same truths by actually probably reading the book that they've brought out, applying the lessons, or just going back to the old school self-development ideas and just really diligently applying that stuff. You don't need the pay to play model. I realize this is probably going against a lot of the business model of self help. And frankly, I don't care. I don't want to make money from self help and trying to trick people into paying for something that they can get for free. That's really my mission here, is to kind of diffuse that smoke screen, if you like, of this pay to play model. And so for me, you can tell I'm quite passionate about this thing that, gurus kind of trick you into thinking you need to pay to get behind the curtain. It's not true, my friends. Trust me, I've paid to go behind the curtain a lot and there's nothing there, if you want to use a Wizard of Oz metaphor. So, yes, the pay to play guru is the third thing that I think becomes the dark side of self development. Again, a lot of these ideas are just available for free. It comes down to you diligently applying them in the right way in your life that will help you to grow and improve in a healthy way. And number 4, the fourth and final dark side trap, if you like, of self improvement is this idea of never there. Now, this has a good and a bad side. The never there concept, it is very Zen, because it's the idea that we're always on the path, we're always growing and developing. And so we're always evolving as people. Who you are today is not who you were yesterday or last week, et cetera, et cetera. So we're never really there. The dark side of that is when we think that, man, I just haven't made it yet. And if you are a person who is trying to achieve a goal in your life, you're trying to grow and develop yourself, you've probably felt this frustration at times where you think, I'm just not there. I'm not who I wanted to be. I haven't achieved the level of success that I'd hoped for. And I feel like a failure, or I feel like I'm average, or I feel like I'm not the person who I hoped I would be. I'm not there yet. And this idea is, it's really important to understand, is that you're never actually going to get there. It doesn't matter if you break through and achieve a big goal in your life. As soon as you do, there's going to be another big goal that you want to achieve. You never actually get there. One of my favorite personal development mentors is Earl Nightingale, and he's from the 1950s. And he talked about this metaphor of people sailing in a ship. So a ship's captain, they always have a destination from one port to another. And so you can imagine the whole time they're on that journey, in their mind is that one destination. But they also know, as the captain of a ship, they're going to reach that destination, they're going to restock the ship, and then they're going to head out to another destination. A ship is meant to be out on the water, traveling somewhere. And that's kind of the same as human beings. We're actually not meant to get there. We're meant to keep traveling. And that's really what I'm trying to get to here, is the idea that keep traveling because you're never going to get there, because you're enjoying the journey. That's really what we're on this path for together. But if you keep punishing yourself thinking, I'm not there yet, I'm not the person I thought I would be, that's where you start to get into the dark side and you start to beat yourself up. Recently on my YouTube channel, I've had a lot of people seeing the video feeling like a failure. And I know a lot of people who are probably watching this have seen that video, and I appreciate you liking and commenting on that video. But that's really at the core of what this problem is that I'm discussing, this idea that we're never there. We're not where we thought we'd be, and we feel like a failure. So if you're feeling that in your life, it's probably because you're attaching to this idea that when I achieve this, or when I get to this port in my ship, if you like, I'll be there. You won't be there. You'll find another port and you'll start sailing again. So this idea of never there, it is a mental trap. It does have a healthy side as long as you realize that you are on the journey and that's the purpose. But it has a dark side if you fall into the trap of I'm not there yet, or I haven't achieved what I thought I would, because we're never there. So there we go, my friends. Those are 4 ideas. Let me repeat them for you. The first one is the idealized self. The second is the one thing. The third is the pay to play guru. And the fourth is the concept of never there. I believe those 4 things can create the dark side mentality of self-improvement if you're not careful. Again, talking to myself just as much as anyone else out there, I am so guilty of falling into these. I still fall into them at times, but I'm creating this because I want to share these after many, many years of pursuing self-improvement, trying to change and grow as a person. I'm realizing that, hey, maybe it's time we realize there is a dark side to this if we go too far or we fall into a mental trap. So I hope those ideas are useful for you. And yeah, I'd love to hear in the comments which ones you fall into. Be very interested to know, both here on Instagram and on YouTube as well.